Hello, I am Mystic Orange and this is video hashtag 650. In this video, we're back at it again. We're doing more Winx Club things. So if you don't know, I already ranked, the Winx Club voices and their personality. I did this for the Winx Club main characters and I did this for the specialists. And for this video, I want to do this for the teachers. I'm not just ranking their voices. I'm ranking their personalities portrayed by these voices. In this video, it's just going to be the main Alfeo teachers. Anyway, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and let's get into this video. The first teacher we're going to rank with their voices is going to have to be the head teacher of the school, Miss Faragonda. In the Winx Club franchise, we have 4 versions of Miss Faragonda. We have the Ray Faragonda, Focus Miss Faragonda, Nick Miss Faragonda, and Movie Miss Faragonda. And in the 4th place, I would have to place Nick Miss Faragonda. I like Miss Faragonda. She's nice, she's pleasant, but she doesn't have a distinct personality. She's just a generic head teacher, kind of bland. She's not distinct enough for a head teacher in comparison to the other head teachers. And at 3rd spot, I would have to place Movie Miss Faragonda. She's not any better, but she's slightly better. Just only by a few margins. Now out of those 2, we get 2 other Miss Faragondas who actually do have distinct personalities. And at 2nd spot, I would have to place Ray Miss Faragonda. I mean, at least she has a personality. But with this Miss Faragonda, I can easily compare her to Dumbledore. I think she's fair and earnest. She's doing all her best, to protect Bloom. Same way how Dumbledore, protects Harry Potter. However, both of these characters have something questionable. They keep secrets from, the main character. Well, at least Miss Faragonda in the Ray version does this with Bloom, and you have to question that. And sometimes you kind of have to question if, sometimes does Miss Faragonda care about Bloom just as much she does about the school? Which is fair. I think for her, protecting the school is the most important. But you have to also question, she's very questionable for, hiding these secrets from Bloom. However, in the 4th spot, I would have to place Focus Miss Faragonda. This is the only Miss Faragonda I can accept. I love Miss Faragonda in the Focus dub. She's just so perfect. I think her relationship with Bloom is much more meaningful. It's not just like a student-head-teacher relationship. It seems a bit more deeper than that. The vibe I get from Miss Faragonda in the Fox's dub is that she gives a grandmotherly vibe. It's like a grandmother to her granddaughters. This is how she approaches with these students. And I love her Fox's voice. It's so comforting. Anyway, those are the reasons why I placed Miss Faragonda of the Focus dub at the 1st spot. The next character we're going to talk about is Mrs. Griselda, who is the deputy head teacher of Althea. So we will be ranking the Ray Mrs. Griselda, Focus Mrs. Griselda, Nick Mrs. Griselda, and the Movie Mrs. Griselda. And at 4th spot, I would have to place the Movie Mrs. Griselda. There is one scene from the movies that, really sticks with me. And that's from the 3rd movie. It's where Mrs. Griselda is, scolding the Winx as usual, but with this scolding, she tries to sound young and hip, trying to mimic, Stella, and it just doesn't sound right. I remember Mrs. Griselda saying something like, "Oh, these girls are naturally waiting for you," with her croaky voice. I think she's just sounding desperate to sound hip and young, but not in a cool way. I think Focus, Griselda does this better when, she's trying to, mimic a younger audience. Or is, like trying to mimic, Stella's lingo. She does this by patronizing the Winx girls, but she does it effectively. With this one, she's just trying too hard. Which is why movie Griselda is at first spot. At third spot, I would have to place Nick, Mrs. Griselda. Yet again, I think this version of, Mrs. Griselda is kind of bland. I think, she has, weak performances and she doesn't really, portray her strict self that much. She just sounds generic. At second spot, I would have to place Ray Griselda. I kind of have to respect Ray Griselda. I think what we know about Mrs. Griselda is that she is strict, but at times we can see like Mrs. Griselda can push it to an extreme, can take it too far sometimes, I think. But with Ray, Mrs. Griselda, I think when she's strict, she's really fair with her strictness. Like whenever she delivers her, discipline to the Winx girls, I agree with them. Because the Winx, think they can do whatever they like, breaking the rules. And, with Ray, Mrs. Griselda, I sense that, like, she does this with a good reason. I think, she's pretty fair with, like, providing the rules to the students and making it clear. She's great at communicating that with the students. However, at top spot, I would have to place Focus Mrs. Griselda. I think it, one thing I would say she's weaker than the Ray Mrs. Griselda is that Focus Mrs. Griselda can be too tough sometimes and can be too mean. But nonetheless, I think she is the most fun, Mrs. Griselda. Also, with her strictness, I also sense like with this Mrs. Griselda, you really can sense her age. Like she's not old as Mrs. Fargonda, of course not. Like Mrs. Fargonda, you would assume she's like in her 90s or hundreds, like she's in her centuries. But like Mrs. Griselda, you can sense like she's in her 60s. And how she comes across with her, the Focus voice, you can really, I guess, sense that with her. And to be honest, even with her strict self, like even if she's being mean, I also have a lot of fun with her being mean to the, students. I think it's easy to compare her to, Professor Snape from Harry Potter, although not as cruel as, a Professor Snape. At least I can compare her to the movie Professor Snape. And because I have a lot of fun with Focus, Mrs. Griselda, this is why she's at top spot for me. The next character we're going to talk about is Palladium. Professor Palladium is a potionology teacher. He's an elf in Althea. Just like Faragonda and Griselda, there's 4 versions of Palladium. We have the Ray Palladium, Focus Palladium, Nick Palladium, and a movie Palladium. For the most part, I don't have any problem with Palladium's voices for any of them. At first spot, I would have to place Ray Palladium. I think Ray Palladium does a good job at voicing, Palladium. I think he does a good job of making, Palladium sound gentlemanly. However, I don't think he has like distinctive personality. At best, you can say, Palladium does sound feminine. At third spot, I would have to place movie Palladium. And I have to be honest, I actually do like movie Palladium. When I heard his voice and, his personality in the movies, I do like that. I think for movie Palladium, he really leans into like Palladium's elf, personality. The fact that he is an elf and that's the vibe I get. It's giving like fantasy, medieval fantasy vibes. In a way, it sounds like a heroic character. I think if you played like Dungeons or Dragons or like I guess if you played Legends of Zelda, that's the vibe this Palladium gives. Our second spot, I would have to place Nick Palladium. For this Palladium, I do like him. With his voice, this Palladium does sound softer and a bit more kinder. With the Ray Palladium, I do find him a little bit harsh at times. But with Nick Palladium, he just makes himself a bit more gentle and soothing. I can easily, pair Nick Palladium with Flora. And at first spot, I would have to place a Focus Palladium. My favorite thing about Focus Palladium is that, I think I can say that this Palladium sounds the most queer out of them lot. I think it is more feminine, a bit more flamboyant. That's the vibe I get from this Palladium. And I think the voice actor, voices Timmy. Out of the two, I think he does a better job at voicing Palladium because I think he just makes Palladium seem a bit more feminine. I think this is something we should encourage in the Winx Club, and I think, this is a great voice for Palladium. You could say, like, with this Palladium, he does sound a bit high pitched. That's the problem I had with, Focus Timmy. But honestly, I can put that aside, and I can accept that this version of Palladium is the best one. Anyway, at first, but with no hesitation, I'm going to have to place movie whiskers. Not only I don't like movie whiskers, I thus really hate him with a fiery passion. Honestly, movie whiskers is one of the worst moments about the first movie. Oh, I just hate him. Like when he scolds at Myrta for not only defending him, but also defending herself by, attacking a monster with using a dark magic. And he just belittles Myrta for using dark magic. As if, saying that dark magic is bad. This not only makes Whiskey sound prejudiced, it also makes it dumb. Just a reminder to anyone who are watching this, video, darkness does not equal evil. I hope everyone can get that. I bet if you're like a witch stan in this, movie, you kind of have to hate the scene. I can't imagine anyone who's like a gothic persona or like likes characters with dark themes and are represented good. I can bet you like this is would you would hate this too. Anyway, at third spot, I would have to place Nickelodeon Professor Whiskers. I actually don't mind him. He's alright. I think he's pretty likable. You can tell he's a leprechaun with his, small size, but also his, petite personality. He does have a high pitched voice, but without being annoying. It's very childlike manner when I think of Nickelodeon Whiskers. I think one of my favorite moments about Nickelodeon Whiskers is definitely in season 5 when he created this monster, to help the Winx. I think his important lesson there was really interesting. Like the lesson of using fire with fire. I think at second spot, I would have to place Focus Whiskers. I do love Professor Whiskers in the Focus dub. I find him really funny, especially in that one scene where, he changed the girl's head into pumpkins. And then he addresses his, pet rat as his grandpa. And also, one thing I like about Whiskers in this version is definitely his voice. Not only can you tell like his young, youthful character is kind of bright and bubbly, you definitely can see, see his energetic personality, just like in any others. But with this, Professor Whiskers, I don't think he sounds young. He sounds old. So with this voice, you can really sense like he's like an elderly man with this, voice. And it does make you, think about leprechauns in real life. And, maybe leprechauns in this world. So in Wiz Club canon, you think that like, Miss Fergonda is the oldest of, the staff members. But I think, it's possible like she's like 100 or 200 years old. Who knows? Like, the Wiz Club timeline is kind of fucked up. But knowing about Whiskers and the Wiz Club, thinking about how leprechauns are, I think Professor Whiskers is probably older than, Miss Faragonda. He probably existed before, she was born. And I think with Focus, Whiskers, I think this is what it adds. Anyway, at top spot for me, I would have to place Ray Whiskers. I think he's the best Whiskers, and there is one reason why this Whiskers is always going to be number one for me, and this is the voice acting himself, and this has to do with his accent. I love that the voice actor, does an Irish accent, for Whiskers. Not only, giving, diverse accents to, to these characters, to someone like Whiskers, I think it should be encouraged. But also, this is kind of as to, Leprechaun's Law. Just so you know, Wiz Club isn't, based on like real world, like in we wouldn't find like Ireland in Wiz Club. It would be existing in Earth, but we would imagine what it would be like in other planets. I just love that this Professor Whiskers is inspired by the Irish law. So therefore, I'm gonna have to, stand by my statement by saying that Ray Whiskers is perfection. It's number one for me. So those are my genuine rankings for the teachers. Three of them, have Focus, and Whiskers is the only one who has Ray as the number one. So if I had to remake Winx Club again and choose voices for them, those are the choices I would pick. Anyway, with that being said, I guess this video is over. Let me know what you think in the comments. Which voices of these teachers do you like the best? Which ones do you like the least? Also, to point out for this video, this channel currently has 598 subscribers. And I only need 2 more subscribers to reach 600 milestone. So it would be nice if you could, share this channel with other people so that, I can reach that milestone. And if I reach that milestone, I might do a fun Q&A. So if you have any questions for me, you can put it down in the comments. I would love it, answering these comments for my Q&A video. Anyway, remember to like, share and subscribe and have a lovely day.